I am deep in enemy territory. This is a place I never wanted to go and never expected to find myself. I am surrounded on all sides. Everywhere I look, all I see are people and things that I hate. And I feel this sickening realization coming upon me. I think I might be falling in love. And if this is love, it's a love that's going to tear me apart. I was born in Chicago in 1970 and lived in Greater Chicagoland until 1982 when my folks moved the family out to this area. And when you are a Chicago native, there are a few things that you learn about the same time as you learn how to walk. You learn that unless it has a pickle spear and celery salt on it, and it's on a poppy seed bun, it's not a Chicago hot dog. You learn that there are two seasons, winter and road construction. You learn that everybody south of the Loop roots for the White Sox, and everybody north of the Loop is right and roots for the Cubs. And you learn to hate New York City. Now, there are a lot of reasons Chicagoans hate New York. Some of mine, well, I mean, come on. They call themselves the greatest city in the world, the Big Apple. What do they call Chicago? The second city. Literally runner-up. How condescending. And certainly in my youth, their sports teams did a lot better than ours did, and boy, were they loud about it. And some particulars. Everybody always talked about the Empire State Building. We had the Sears Tower, at the time, the largest, tallest building, not just in the country, in the world. And we never got credit for that. And everybody always said, oh, Macy's, the holiday decorations at Macy's, they're so wonderful. We had Carson Peary Scott, Weebolts, and the grand dam of them all, Marshall Fields, and they could have given Macy's a run for its money any year. I say could because the first two are long out of business and the third was bought by Macy's. But it's not just about comparison and hatred. There are so many reasons to love Chicago, and when you grow up there, they grow in your heart. There are world-class museums. The Museum of Science and Industry, I practically grew up in that building. The Art Institute is a shrine. The Adler Planetarium is amazing. It has some of the best architecture in the world. It is a smorgasbord of architecture, and it is a style uniquely Chicago. And for me, one of the best things to do in the entire world is to go downtown on a summer night, go to Grant Park, buy some ice cream, and go over to Buckingham Fountain you can watch the hourly light show as a cool breeze blows in off Lake Michigan. It is a sacred place to me. So as I said, my parents moved the family out here when I was 12, and for me it was like being ripped out of paradise. And I longed to be back home. I would sometimes late at night tune in WGN if the weather was just right, just wanting to hear familiar place names, Diversey, the Dan Ryan, Lincoln Park. It was enough. But as my affection for my city turned into longing, my hatred for New York hardened. And I swore to myself, if I had anything to say about it, I would never set foot in that city. One day in June of 1989, I didn't have anything to say about it. My friend Jim had called me up early that month. Hey, do you have anything going on the 23rd, the weekend of the 23rd? No, I'm pretty sure I'm free. Great. Pack a bag, plan to be out of town for a couple of days. We're going on a road trip. Really? That's fantastic. That sounds like fun. Where are we going? Let's keep that a secret for now. He picks me up on the appointed day, and we start driving north on 95. I'm not thinking much about it. I'm just having a fun drive with one of my best friends on a summer's day. Windows are down, tunes are cranking, we're talking, until I spot that unmistakable skyline that I have seen in too many movies and TV shows. What are you doing? Calm down, you're gonna love it. You know how I feel about New York. Turn this car around. Calm down, you're gonna love it. And by that time, it was too late. Soon we were in the Lincoln Tunnel, and before I knew it, I had entered Manhattan for the first time. Now, the reason for the trip became apparent very quickly. We checked into our hotel, and there were signs all over. This was a Star Trek convention. So a really nice gift for me, something I was going to enjoy. But the festivities really weren't going to start until the next morning. So we stowed our gear, and Jim said, come on, let's hit the streets. And I followed reluctantly behind him. After a couple of blocks, we realized we were both hungry. Jim steered us over to a hot dog cart. So what do you think? It's not bad. It's not a Chicago dog. It's not bad. It was really good. But I pushed that away, and we finished our impromptu meal and headed north, and we entered Times Square. And I was overwhelmed. The lights, the billboards, the sounds, and the ocean of humanity moving around. There was this energy. It was undeniable. And it didn't feel like the energy in Chicago. It was different, but it was no less potent. And in that moment, I realized I could become very fond of this place. And I instantly felt like a traitor. I would go up over the next few years on occasion to New York. It's much closer than Chicago. It's easier to get there. I made friends up there. I would go to visit them. But I always felt conflicted, like I was cheating on Chicago. I abstained from the great Chicago versus New York style pizza debate because I preferred New York. And these feelings of guilt and being torn, I feared they would never be resolved. When I met my wife, Kim, around the turn of the century, one of the first things we discovered about each other was that we loved to travel. More to the point, we loved staying in great hotels. Both Chicago and New York have a plethora of those, so we ended up making a lot of trips to both cities. And when we did that, initially, we went to places that were obvious. In Chicago, places that were my haunts, the places that I loved the most. I introduced her to them. In New York, it was Broadway shows and Central Park and Times Square. But after just a few trips, we'd run out of things that were familiar and obvious. And Kim started suggesting new adventures. In New York, one time, have you ever been to a jazz club? No, I haven't. Not at all. We should go to the Village Vanguard. Let's do that. So we went to the Village Vanguard, and I heard live professional jazz for the first time, and it was stupendous. A couple of years later in Chicago, you know there's a restaurant at the top of the Sears Tower? Well, I think I knew that. I've never been. We should go. We should totally go. So we went to the signature room on the 95th floor. And it was there, with the building slightly swaying as it's designed to do, looking out over the lights of the city, and beyond that, the suburbs stretching almost out to Iowa. Something shifted in me. Seeing these new places in these two cities that I loved, detached from any feelings of nostalgia or guilt, I was finally able to resolve this conflict and say, I am a son of Chicago, and I love New York. And now that I've finally resolved all those feelings, I feel like maybe I could start checking this place out. Hey, is there anything to do here in DC?